Hello again. Welcome to the Class Podcast, where we amplify the voice of the patient. I'm Adam Charrington. Happy to be with you again. And I'm with my partner in crime here, Dan Check.
Nice to see everybody again and talk to you a little bit about what we're hearing from providers and patients about their experiences.
So Dan, I should clarify, I'm known as the other Adam at Class. Adam Gale is our CEO, and if you hear from Adam at Class, it's usually him, but I'm the other Adam. So
I've been with Class almost 16 years now, and they still haven't offered to put my name or my initial in the logo. So I don't know what you need to do around here.
We could be D Class or Class D or anyway. Hey, really excited about today's episode. We are going to interview Micheal Oniell, founder and CEO of GetWellNetwork, and he's got a great perspective to share with us. So really excited about that. Dan, I love when we can share some of the things we're hearing specific to how healthcare is improving for patients or what else needs to be improved. I thought we'd take just a minute. Would love to hear anything you've heard on your research calls this week. I've got a couple things I wanted to share. So anything come up good this week that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I had a fantastic conversation with an organization just a day or two ago, and it was interesting. Sometimes you listen for those sticky things that provider organizations say or the nerves that they share with us, we like to call them here at Class. And this organization shared with me that as they move, we've now are post-COVID or post the surge of COVID and,
Sure.
and a lot of technologies have been adopted. They talked about how their organization is transitioning from a brick and mortar approach to what he called brick and click, which is this hybrid of meeting the patient where they are. If they want to come in for an in-person visit, they can facilitate that through technology. If they want to have a virtual visit or an e-visit, they can do that through technology. So you've got this hybrid approach, this brick and click. I thought that was a fantastic insight that they shared.
That's awesome. They should really trademark that one. It's pretty catchy. So mine was pretty simple, but it was a meaningful conversation I heard where this provider that we interviewed said patient engagement software is really hard. It only works to the extent that patients and staff members want to engage with it. And that really meant a lot to me when I think about you need to cater to both the provider and also the patient, and sometimes we're missing part of that. It made me think of a new additional question we're asking on ease of use. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, one of the things that we often hear when we talk to provider organizations, we ask them a question around the ease of use of their technology. And often as we talk around patient engagement technologies, they say, well, do you mean the ease of use for the physician, the ease of use for the office staff, or the ease of use for the patient? And so we're starting to ask follow-up questions to have organizations rate what that experience looks like for the patient, for the provider, and really understand how well these solutions are transitioning towards a more patient-centric model.
Yeah. I'm really glad we're doing that because it's interesting when there is a difference in the scoring there. I had a call today where they were talking about, hey, for patients it's a 7, for our staff it's a 9 on the class 1 to 9 scale. I should include, and when I say, well, tell me the difference there, you really get some insights of hey, this is working over here, but it could use some more attention on this side of the service. So I'm really excited about that. Hopefully soon we'll be able to start to vet out what are we learning on that specific question. So related to that, it really amplifies the idea that you need to design these tools using patients or talking to patients or thinking of their use cases as well as the staff or the clinicians that are touching this. So
yeah, it'll be exciting to tell the market in the future who's doing well at both.
Yeah.
Because that's the ultimate ideal, right?
Yeah.
They're meeting the needs of the organization and the needs of the patient.
I think we talked about this last time a little bit. We know there's some differences between what patients want, what vendors are offering in some cases, and what providers are focused on. So that's really the goal of all these conversations, isn't it? How can we marry those together a little better? Another thing we're working on, I'm really excited about, we keep hearing about digital front door, and it's not a new term, but it seems to be growing in frequency. This is a study we're kicking off, and I thought it would be good to take a moment and just talk about that. What will you share? What is our vision for that report, and what we plan to do there?
Sure. It's interesting as we keep our ears to the ground with what provider organizations are doing, what's really driving their passion. we've heard more and more this past year as consumers have really become front and center and patients are driving a lot of the decisions, the need to create a strategy that ties together a lot of technologies as you bring a patient in from the time they're looking for care to the time that they receive that care. And what are the different technology touch points that need to be connected together into a seamless experience for the patients as they want a Uber-like experience with their healthcare. So we want to go and talk to some of the leading organizations in the U.S. that are really pioneers with digital front doors and share some best practices to the industry. What's working well? What challenges have they had? What technologies are a core part of their solution? And to really help organizations that are just in the infancy of developing their programs to understand what their journey may look like as they embark.
I'm really excited about this one as well because, boy, we're getting a lot of definitions. What does it even mean to different groups? And we've said that you talk to 10 organizations, you get 20 definitions of what is that purpose and why is it a thing. So very excited about that. And for some of our listeners that may have a suggestion, we would love to hear from them. Who's a pioneer here, or who's a superstar in this space? So, if you can help us out and you're listening, we would love to hear from you. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to transition to our guest today and welcome in Micheal Oniell, founder and CEO of GetWellNetwork. Micheal, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Thrilled to be here with you guys.
Well, we really appreciate it. So, Micheal, as you know, this is a podcast dedicated to amplifying the voice of the patient in healthcare. And that seems to be something that a lot of us talk about, and we're trying to make sure it gets amplified, and more people on the vendor side, the provider side, every part of healthcare has an opportunity to elevate that. When we designed this, I thought of you, and I thought of your story and how GetWell got started, and we'd love for you to do an intro and tell us the GetWell story, if you would.
Hey, we'll do, but first, just Adam and class, I guess all of you guys, thanks for having me, and thanks for doing what you guys do, for pushing us to just be better on behalf of our health system partners, and on behalf of the millions of patients and families that, candidly, we've had the privilege to touch and serve over the past year and for many years. Man, what a ride this has been. What an important time to work in the world's most important industry to address the most important needs of these patients and these incredible healthcare workers who care for us. So I will tell you, man, since we last spoke live, during this pandemic, look, GetWell turned 20, I turned 50. My man, it's time to swing big and surround ourselves with people who bring light and think big, but will work small and create change. And honestly, it's a privilege to be here. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, on behalf of just giving a little bit of background, I won't bore you with growing up in New York, the middle of 5 kids over 6 years, 2 bunk beds, 1 room, 5 kids. The whole deal was kind of a wild ride. But my life kind of began with just growing up around understanding what it meant to root for each other, to share openly, to kind of make the world a kind of better place, and to find strength in our differences. And ironically enough, it really has played out both throughout my life, and then also at the moment where this kind of world conspired to kind of bring me into healthcare. And so that's kind of begins our Get Well story. And I'm certainly happy to share if it'd be helpful for your listeners, So
that'd be great.
So I kind of raced through my first 28 years on Earth, just blessed to be around incredible family and friends, and racing as fast as I possibly could to try to impact and create as many friends and have as big an impact as I could, and didn't really understand yet what I was really meant to do. And then I was in graduate school at Georgetown University in DC. I was 3 years into a 4-year JD MBA graduate program for law and business, and was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, you can imagine so 3 years into my 4 years of grad school, was just engaged for 3 months, and then I wake up in an ED after complaining about stomach and back pain for many, many months. wake up in an ED after they kind of knocked me out and did an EGD, an upper endoscopy. And I look to my left, and there's my fiance, Wendy Eskandarian at the time, and she's clutching her wedding magazines to her arm, and she has tears like rolling down her face. And I'm kind of like, this is going to be a really bad next 60 seconds. So I look to my right, and on my bed tray was like a 4-color like Polaroid printout, which is how they used to do this back in the day, of a picture of the inside of my stomach. And that photograph was very obvious. There was this nasty looking tumor about the size of a tangerine or a small orange. And within 24 hours, I was in surgery and waiting for pathology to come back to tell me whether or not this thing was malignant or benign. And thus began kind of my entree into this amazing industry, into be surrounded by these amazing people who were born and trained to deliver patient and family-centered care, but too often the system of care gets in the way of us delivering that incredible care that we were kind of born and trained to give. And so like this began my journey kind of into GetWellNetwork.
So, wow, I can't imagine. I mean, right in the prime of life, and you're thrown into this. And talk about how you got the idea for GetWellNetwork from that beginning.
Yeah, so this always sounds a little bit cliche when you look back, but in fact, it's exactly how it happened. So when I was actually diagnosed, I laid for 9 days in an oncology unit at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, and waiting for my surgeon. He was waiting for pathology to come back to confirm whether or not it was cancer or not. And during those 9 days, you can imagine they are painstaking, both painful because you're recovering from surgery, and painstaking because your whole life is kind of turned on its head, and you're trying to just ask whatever questions you can. You're trying to figure out what the heck's going on, in life, with your health, with your body, with your mind, and will you be able to navigate through all this? And meanwhile, you have all these people trying to visit you, asking you 100 questions that you can't answer because you don't know the answers to yet. And so there's all of this kind of stuff going on around you. And I'll never forget, on the 7th day, as I was still waiting to be confirmed, I'd already been hinted that it's probably going to be malignant. And if it is, here are some kind of potential kind of treatment paths ahead of me. And so I was asking people, hey, look, I'm just trying to get my head around. I'm coming from grad school. I have all this access, all this information, like right at my fingertips. And now I'm here, like my phone's out of battery. I don't have my laptop with me. Like, how can I learn about this whole thing? And so one of the nurses was kind enough to pop up from kind of his or her busy day and say, well, if you turn to channel 11 on the TV, we have an education channel, and I'm like, okay, so I'm literally channeling all the way up and around this like television, and I get to this education channel. I kid you not, there's like a breastfeeding video on the station. I'm literally like to myself, what in the world is actually kind of going on? And so that afternoon, my law school roommate came to visit me from DC, and I had drawn out on a napkin, like on my bed tray, like with a pencil, hey, here's this TV. What if we actually turned this TV into a desktop and we hooked it up to like the electronic stuff and I didn't know what it even meant, like in the hospital, and we created like a desktop for patient care, so that while patients like me were sitting here, we actually could figure out like what was going on around us. We could connect with our family and friends. We could update our Facebook accounts. We could just do the things that actually make us feel like we're in control. And that literally is kind of where this concept began. And I was blessed to have a year left in grad school, surrounded by the most amazing and flexible professors at Georgetown to allow me to spend 9 months, really kind of cultivating what this could actually be as a business.
Wow, it's amazing. So from there, GetWellNetwork is started. 20 years later, you're helping health systems and provider friends figure this out. Where does the patient voice fall into your efforts? Where do you see that today, or where it ought to go?
Yeah, so I guess it comes down to this humility and willingness and energy through listening, right? I mean, at the essence of this, right? And it's so important because just like our needs as consumers of everything digital are changing, our needs as consumers of health are actually changing constantly, And so the things that we actually listened for and discovered 20 years ago, they may have relevance, but they have changed so dynamically like over that time. And so I guess the model is a listening one. So first of all, I would tell you it's listen to patients. And at GetWell now, we happen to have like the scale to be able to listen, I think, better than anybody else in the industry. We actually are touching over 7 to 8 million unique patients and families a year, and we are touching them over 40 million times with our digital tools. So you can imagine like the amount of data to like watch and listen to how patients are interacting, what are they commenting on, what are they not doing as much as what are they doing, what are we putting in front of them at what time of day, what modalities do they actually like, is it on a television, is it on an enterprise like managed iPad, is it on their own phone, where are they actually interacting with data, how are they interacting, how are we watching and listening for their activation or lack thereof. And so number one is listen to the patients, and that's the first thing. The second thing is actually listen to providers. Look, we work across now 200 large enterprises covering over 200,000 physicians and millions of nurses. And so and many of them serve on our product councils, our advisory. In fact, right now we have these 2 active councils nationally that are amazing. One of them is on behavioral health. And we don't see behavioral health as a vertical service line. We actually see behavioral health as a horizontal. How can we weave behavioral health components into all the interactions we have? I don't care if you're having a baby, you're being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you're having a knee replaced, or your kid has asthma. How can we actually weave behavioral health horizontally across? We have an advisory council around that, so we're listening to our providers around how they're trying to help their patients and families navigate. And then we're listening to them in their activities, kind of with our tools and other tools as well. And then the third piece is listen to what's happening outside of healthcare. It always makes my eye roll when somebody from outside healthcare comes in and says, what have you been doing all these years? Why can't this actually be better? So there's a naivety, hopefully not mixed with arrogance, but however, there actually is great insight. And the insight is we've created some pretty amazing digital tools that have transformed other industries that are equally regulated. They're equally complicated. They're equally hunkered down with old technology at times that are kind of core systems of how things get done in an organization, but they have found a way to embrace the consumer digital behavior and to layer tools in to make it actually easier for the patient. So I guess that's how we stay up to speed on this. It's a listening model, and it's listening to the multiple stakeholders that you have to listen to do this work really well over time.
That's great. Great insights. Micheal, I've heard your team talk about the work you do with the VA and some of the special things going on there, and I think that's absolutely worth mentioning here. Talk about your passion there and how you help those patients.
Yeah, I guess, well, first of all, you probably find the same thing at class, and that is in any organization, you kind of see great talent flock to certain projects, right? That's kind of how the kind of world works. And so in GetWellNetwork, it's no different when it comes to the VA. Our very best talent flocks to kind of work in the VA work. We happen to have 25 U.S. veterans as teammates, which are they are as inspiring, as amazing as you would think they would be. And we really have done kind of 3 things. So we work across about 60 VA communities across the country. So in almost kind of half of the VA, we do some kind of form of work, and we actually work around veteran experience, as you would probably imagine, right? And so there's kind of 3 core things that we are doing there, and it's incredible. So the first is a couple of years ago, about 6-7 years ago, they started an initiative to bring a whole person health model into the VA. It was brought in by a former head of veteran-centered care named Dr. Tracy Godet. And actually, so she actually was looking for a technology partner to help implement this whole person care model and to leverage technology to kind of scale out this notion of how do you reach out to veterans? How do you kind of include their families? How do you make sure that they feel like they have access to all the amazing services the VA provides, and do it in a way where actually their experience becomes personalized, rich, and in many cases kind of digital. And so some of our core tools at GetWellNetwork are deployed at scale in the VA, and we actually help them implement this kind of whole person health model at the point of care, both in their VA medical centers and in their community living centers. So we're actually working with veterans for years, at a time, helping them understand activities going on, where they can get their benefits from, all the kind of things around that. The second thing we actually do with them is we just do a lot of innovation work around veteran experience. I'll just give you one simple example. So in the VA down in Tampa, for example, they have a very large quadriplegic unit where a lot of the disabled veterans actually come and get their care, and they just do the most incredible work there. And so we have worked directly both with the veteran patients and with the physicians to actually integrate things like sip and puff technology into GetWell. so that these veterans can actually have access to understand that literally they're understanding their meds. They're playing like backgammon and chess with like army buddies across the world. Like it's like the most amazing thing. And so we do a lot of innovation work on how you can really amplify the specific needs of U.S. veterans and bring to life kind of some of these patient experience and patient engagement solutions. And then thirdly, we're really starting to work on some pretty cool kind of future future impact things. We are going through a process today at GetWell to be what they call FedRAMP certified. It simply means you can be in their cloud environment as well. And so with our kind of GetWell Loop, platform, and with our new conversational AI, solutions and patient outreach stuff from a recent acquisition of a company called Docent Health, we actually are thinking about working on a couple of pretty significant programs around veteran behavioral health, and really around helping them make sure that they access the kind of care that all of them deserve, and all that's available to them. And so just some really amazing work that kind of gets us really keeps us up late and gets us up early, if you will,
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so exciting to see your passion behind this and love what you're doing there. So I know Dan had a couple questions as well.
It's interesting to hear this all started with a significant patient experience for you. And the industry's come a long way in the past 20 years since you started GetWell. Do you or a close family member have a recent experience as a patient that you could point to where you had successes or challenges with the technology that surrounded your care experience?
Hey, Dan, so look, it would be hard to not all talk about just for a moment our experience getting COVID tested, monitoring our symptoms at times, and then trying to get vaccinated, right? So we've all had an incredibly recent experience. And I'll tell you, in my case, look, as a cancer survivor, I've got my mom here with me in DC. She has something called scleroderma, which puts her at high risk as well. And so you can imagine from the outset, the whole question was, who's eligible? Am I eligible? And can I get an appointment? And I will tell you that, hey, look, this is complicated, and no one hopefully, rolls their eyes at how complicated this is to get this kind of pandemic kind of under wraps. But I will tell you, the digital experience of doing those things, getting a test early on, am I eligible and getting an appointment? Let's just call it like far less than delightful, and not due to not an incredible amount of effort, but actually due to something that's really happened interestingly in during COVID. We saw the walls came down. The adoption of digital tools was more rapid than ever, which was phenomenal. But in some cases, i.e. trying to figure out how to get an appointment early on for a vaccine, we actually have replaced an historically manual and disjointed patient experience and process with almost an equally disjointed, albeit digital, kind of disjointed patient experience now as we have adopted all these tools at once. And so I will tell you, the cool thing is the tools on their own are incredible. Doing a telehealth visit, easy. Actually finding my way to a parking lot with Google Maps, easy. Actually paying a bill online, easy. The challenge that we're actually having is, how do you put these 4, 5, or 13 things together on behalf of a patient so that their experience is one that feels like Amazon? It's seamless, it's digital, it's personalized, it knows who I am, it knows where I need to go, it actually guides me to the next step of care. And so that's the essence of where we think the next stage of this is. It is, we have now compiled at GetWell this incredible portfolio of patient engagement assets, and almost all of our work is dissolving the walls among those solutions and creating a unified digital patient experience and a consumer navigation layer on behalf of these health systems that can really help people navigate.
That's awesome. We're hearing more and more from provider organizations these days the need for these significant digital transformation efforts and putting in digital front doors and to create that seamless experience that you're talking about. As a patient, you want the experience you're having with Uber and Delta and your favorite hotel chain, where you don't have any questions as you're going to book a flight or book a hotel room, how to get in and out of that experience and create, get to the outcome and the result that you're looking for as a consumer.
I'm glad you mentioned the hotel experience. So, it's funny, we at GetWell, we're starting to invest. We think the next wave of this thing is actually truly bringing consumer digital, into this industry of ours. And we brought on a new leader last fall during the middle of COVID. and really began to push a bunch of chips in on this. So this guy, Todd Strickler, who's now a partner of mine, was hired by the Marriott organization to actually redesign, rebuild, and relaunch their Bomboy app. And for any of you all or any of your listeners who are business travelers, this has truly been transformative. And the reason for that is, believe me, the systems underneath hospitality, booking a room, checking in, buying food, checking out, rebooking and changing, these are all legacy, very old systems, a lot of old tech, if you will, and very complicated and not terribly elegantly integrated. And so the job that Todd had was actually like, how do we work in the confines of some of those challenges, but how do we actually layer, for the business traveler, an experience where they'll never go anywhere else to stay because of how easy we have made of him to go do it. And I will tell you, when we saw what was happening, as I mentioned to you, the third listing pillar is listen outside the industry. So we're calling and basically begging Todd to actually come and help us out. And it's not to discount how important the depth of healthcare knowledge is, but we believe we can actually complement our 20 years of healthcare with some consumer digital and create some of that digital magic that we've seen happen for consumers like all of us in other industries. This is the next wave for us, man. So we think it's coming fast. We're pushing a bunch of chips in, and we think there's great promise ahead to kind of really make this happen.
That's awesome. It's a great example. Michael, as we wrap up, would love to just pick your brain one more time. Where else do you think healthcare needs to go to really focus on the patient? Anything else you'd like to see?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, when I think about that, I think about, again, these kind of outside influences, where in my life, where in our world are we seeing progress? And I actually think about just bringing using technology to bring a more holistic, a more holistic navigation for the patient. So imagine, as opposed to a health system managing a patient's episode, they actually become like a life navigator, like a real guiding light for a person and their family in their journey through life. It happens to be through the lens of their health. And so I actually think about this convergence of a kind of functional health model with delivery of healthcare. And that includes literally nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, sleep, connection. So how do we think about this as a paradigm, and how do we actually leverage the health system as this trusted navigator? How can actually I have a health system in my community be my trusted navigator for my life journey? And so this is, I know it sounds a little bit esoteric, but that's actually where we believe, again, this notion of perfect the episode with better tools that are more integrated, more unified, and more delightful, and then begin to expand the impact and influence you can have on people, not just the patient, by thinking about being a navigation guide as an organization for their life journey. And so we are actually working on some really innovative projects with some health systems who are leaning fully into this notion. And it goes right alongside of some of their changing business models. How do we take on more risk? How do we manage more populations? Well, we have to manage them more holistically. And we think the health system is in a great spot to do that if we do this consumer digital thing well.
Well, Michael, thank you so much. We admire your passion and your leadership in the industry, and really value your perspective here. So thanks a million. It's so great to connect with you and hear what you're working on and how you're leading out. So it's great to connect.
You guys too. Thanks again for having me. Thanks for all you're doing.
Thanks, Michael. All right, Dan. Well, that's another episode of How to Amplify the Voice in Healthcare. Thank you so much. It's always good to be with you.
You're welcome. Always love talking about patients with you.
So we want to remind our listeners, if you have suggestions for content or individuals that could help us really amplify the patient's voice in healthcare, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at patientengagement@classresearch.com. That's KLASresearch.com. And as always, we want to end with a quote to think about what we've talked about a little bit today. This is from John Florio, and he said, "Patience is the best medicine." And I'm going to tweak that and say patients are the best medicine. So let's include them in all of our efforts as we try to improve healthcare together. Thanks for joining. We look forward to sharing more in the future.